Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFC Edmonton. We are up in the Great White North for another fight night. We have ourselves 14 fights on hand, a very big slate, and one that is headlined by Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi. It should be a very fun card. To address the elephant in the room right off the rip, Canada's not been doing well. We need this event. Last event I was at in Canada, we got swept on the main card. If it wasn't for Jillian and Jasmine, we would have got swept completely. And this is a point in time where, with no one winning on Contender Series, with not the most contenders out there, we need this. We do. We have 8 Canadians on tap here. Let's see how many of them I actually end up picking. I'm cheering for them, man. I really do hope they go out there and represent the country well. But regardless, I do think the crowd will be electric. It should be a fun one at Edmonton, and I'm looking forward to it. Without any further ado, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, check out Established to run some more DraftKings premium content, as well as CoolBet, where you can get some boosts on cards like this using code Gordo in the description down below. Aside from that, let's not waste any more time. Let's do this. Get the fight night started with the 17-2 Jack Shore versus the 15-5-1 Youssef Zalal, and what is a pretty fun fight. I kind of see Jack Shore as a Canadian the way that I've been backing him so much inside his UFC run. He started off 15-0. And a guy who I have backed numerous times in the UFC. I think he's very, very talented, very well-rounded, very good striking, very good ability to make reads as the fight goes on, good grappling shall I get there too, and solid wrestling. And I think the best part about him is that fight IQ. He's able to make good reads, take his opponents to where they struggle the most, and able to win fights. There's a few flaws with him, though. He has since moved up to 145, and he is severely undersized for this division, in my opinion. Has lost to some good fighters out there. I mean, losing to Ricky Simone and Jourdain Barriault in his 2 fights at 145, but he's not the biggest guy, and he's going to be losing a lot of these exchanges because of his lack of size, lack of ability to use physicality here. At range, I think he's got solid striking, ability to make reads. On the mat, I think he's a good jiu-jitsu practitioner, and at weight parity, I think he'd have a lot of success, but the size is the issue here. Youssef Zalal has made a return to the UFC, a guy who was cut after some pretty good losses, for being completely honest here, but a guy who is also pretty well-rounded, solid striking, really working on that grappling recently, and has since got 2 back-to-back submission wins. I won't lie, I picked Billy Q against him, but that's neither here nor there. Youssef Zalal is still a guy who brings a lot of pressure, very solid grappler, and a guy who does have some good pressure volume on the feet. He is a natural 145er and will be taller at this weight class here, but this is one where the line seems a bit off in my opinion. I love Youssef Zalal, and I think gun to my head, I will still pick Youssef Zalal due to size here, but I think skill for skill, Shore is more talented. I think he's the better jiu-jitsu practitioner. I think he's got the better technicality on the feet, and whereas he may not have the same volume or pressure wrestling that Zalal does, I think he can hold his own. I think he's just as well-rounded, and I think he's a fighter who maybe deserves a little bit more respect here. The size is holding me back. If this line continues to climb, maybe I'll play him, but from a pure pick perspective, I did pick Zalal. I do think he will shoot takedowns. I do think his size will help him get them, and unfortunately, when the optics there. DraftKings-wise, 9.1 for Youssef Zalal if he is getting takedowns. He has scored a lot better. I mean, he started off the UFC scoring horribly, but has since scored 99-101. In this matchup here, if I do think Zalal is going to land takedowns, then yeah, he has some viability at 9.1K. In this top range, I prefer Malott's finish equity. I prefer Jasudavicius' pressure and pace. Zalal just doesn't fit the best for me, so he will be sprinkled in larger field tournaments. Whereas Shore, a guy I think has some win equity, just not a guy who I see necessarily being a must play. There's some very loose pricing this week, so you don't need these big dogs as much. Not offending him too much. I did pick Zalal, although I do think the line is wide. Next up, we have the 6-1 Jamie Lynn Horth versus the 7-1 Ivana Petrovic. It's an interesting fight down low here on the prelims. I don't mind Jamie Lynn Horth. I think she's got a fun style inside the UFC. She's very aggressive. She will go forward, and that mixed with her physicality and durability, something that's going to make her a key component here. She's not the most technical fighter on the feet. She's not the most technical fighter on the ground, but she's strong. She'll win battles inside the clinch, and she throws a ton of volume to where people will wilt. She will go forward with reckless abandon. It's a style that kind of mimics the Jasudavicius style without the same amount of wrestling, but utilizing her size, her physicality is how she wins fights here. It's going up against Ivana Petrovic, who does have a decent kickboxing background. I do think he'll be the more technical fighter and someone who has shown wrestling in the past year, but this is one where I'm going with Jamie Lynn Horth. We're picking the Canadian here early on as someone who I just think will be the one on the front foot, the one applying pressure, and the one who I just think has the physicality to go out there and win this fight. Petrovic struggled in the back foot against Luana Carolina, and I do think Jamie Lynn Horth will bring that same style, win minutes in the clinch, just put a pace on Petrovic that I don't think she can handle too much. The volume, pace, pressure, I do side with Jamie Lynn Horth in this matchup. Should be a fun one. DraftKings-wise, I think Horth has some viability as a mid-range pivot play because she has not scored that well. A 67 against Cowan would have scored 65 and winning against Hardy. as her horrible scores, but with her pressure, with her cage control, potential takedowns here, I think her path to victory could, in theory, score well, but a complete secondary option, even a tertiary option, just if you want to get different on the slate like this. More times than not, I don't think this fight scores very well. Let's move on to the next. And that next one is the 13-7 Chad Anheliger versus the 20-10 Cody Gibson. A fun fight here. Chad Anheliger won his last one, and all power to him. I love myself from Chad Anheliger. Nice stash, fun fighter, a ton of power in those hands as well, and he was mixing in some good wrestling last time as well. He's a guy in here, Cody Gibson, who's been up and down, 20-10 inside MMA, a guy with a very vast experience range here, and a guy who's put on some very, very fun fights, most notably against other Canadian here in Brad Katona. Now, these guys both being 37, I think we have seen what we've had to see from them. They are both going to bring different styles, right? Chad Anheliger is more precision, power. He's not going to land as much volume, and he has shown he's improving that wrestling, but still someone who can be stuck on his back, someone who can be out volume on the feet, and someone who I have seen rocked, although all usually pretty durable. Cody Gibson's more so that brawler. He will go forward, he'll throw a ton of volume. He's got a much more size in this matchup, 4 inches taller, 7 inches more for each year, and he's going to be the more aggressive fighter. I don't think he's as sharp technically as Chad Anheliger, but he not only has that ability, but also ability to go out there and land takedowns shall he need to. Not really his primary style, but did land 2 last time in a row to a first round submission over Brian Kelleher. So a guy who I do not mind here on Cody Gibson. At the end of the day, I think that Chad Anheliger definitely has a chance. If this is a 50-minute striking affair, he can land the counter shots, but more times than not, I think Cody Gibson goes out there, wins the volume, wins the pressure, and seeing his durability, but also his size in this matchup really has me favoring him here. Not only can he mix in the takedowns as well, but just win the optic with his range, his volume, and his pressure throughout 15 minutes. Should be a pretty fun fight, but I am picking Cody Gibson here, and on DraftKings, a solid play. Only won 2 fights in the UFC. 110, 126. Both first round finishes, so we can't see how they scored too well, but a guy who does have a ton of volume, a guy who does have a wrestling path to victory, and at 8.7K, I think he wins at a pretty decent clip here, where I think he could have some decent value. So I like him this mid-range, 8.7K. I like Cody Gibson this week. He should get it done. Chad Anheliger, I'm not picking too often because I do think when Anheliger wins, it's going to be a counter-striking battle, right? It's going to be one where he's probably going to win optics with his counter shot, but I don't think he's finishing Gibson, and I don't think he has the volume or the pace to score well enough at 7.5K to meet his salary. So give me Gibson or pass on DraftKings and Gibson to win overall. Next up, 10-2 Surrey City versus the 10-4 Garrett Armfield. This is a very fun fight. Actually, one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most because I do think it's going to be a pretty entertaining one. Surrey City's a guy who won a Contender Series, and then I saw him lose to the same guy who fought in a Contender Series in Toronto in January. A very well-rounded fighter. He's got very good submissions, although he has shown he wants to strike recently. Very awkward style. I don't think he's the quickest boxer on the feet, but a guy who does have a lot of power. He guy's pretty unorthodox and can win styles that way as well, and a guy who on the mat is pretty dangerous. I think the best part about him is his forward pressure and his cardio. The guy can go a full 15 minutes. His chin is still a here or there, but a guy who I do think has good durability throughout, will push forward, and a guy who's pretty well-rounded. Garrett Armfield himself is shown a decent well-rounded skill set, but in a different way. Surrey City is more so long game. He can beat you all 3 rounds, he can beat you on the mat, beat you on the feet, whereas Armfield, though he has that wrestle boxing style, it's quick, it's explosive, and it's early. The more the fight goes on, the more he fades down the stretch, and we saw that last time against Brady Heastand, cashed a nice round 3 bet there, but a guy who is just super explosive early in Armfield, who has the power to knock out anybody's lights, and a guy who has the wrestling to really take people down as well. Although I think Surrey City has the way better cardio and probably the better pure jiu-jitsu game, I favor the hand speed, the power, and maybe the wrestling of someone like Garrett Armfield, who I think can go out there. Now, do I trust him enough to play him, considering his lack of cardio recently? Maybe not, but he is still a guy who I think has paths to victory here. Although Surrey City has a pretty well-rounded skill set, I'm still not completely sold on his hand speed on the feet and maybe his ability to wrestle at all times. So I think this is a close one. I'm going to side here with the underdog, unfortunately. I'm cheering for Canada. Something's telling me the explosiveness, the hand speed of Garrett Armfield will be too much too early, and I do think he can land takedowns of his own right. Maybe I'll play some violence here. Maybe I'll play some City round 3 because I do think as the fight goes on, it does favor Surrey City's cardio, but close fight. I think this could be a 50-50 coin flip, and if that's the case, give me the underdog. It should be a fun one. DraftKings-wise, I don't mind Armfield at all on DraftKings. 7.6K, and he's put up some decent scores. 118 against Kazama, 77 in decision win against Katona there, but a guy who does have wrestling upside, a guy who does have knockout upside, a very good hand speed early on. City himself has a potential to go out there and score pretty well. 8.6K has potential late submission upside. I think has more volume in this matchup, but I think I like other people more around him. Both of them are fine on DraftKings. City is more of a contrarian play up top, whereas I don't mind Armfield outright as one of my favorite underdog options on the slate. Should be a close fight. I am looking forward to it, but give me Garrett Armfield. Next up, 17-3 Alexander Romanov versus the 11-2 Rodrigo Nascimento. I saw Nascimento fight live in the main event against Derek Lewis, who we'll talk about later on this card, but a guy who was just knocked out there, a guy who does have a decent ground game with decent volume on the feet, but is one of those typical big heavyweights. That's what he is. He's going to go out there, he's going to swing heavy. Not the best striker at all, but a guy who can mix in the wrestling, can mix in takedowns as well, and beat this low level of competition. He's taking on Alexander Romanov, who I thought was the real deal. I mean, he was 15-0 coming in here, just destroying everybody. And in hindsight, it was a low level of competition, but he was destroying everybody in the mat. At one point was the biggest favorite of all time. But a guy who was just super aggressive, super fun style where he's landing those slam takedowns, and a guy who was just super dominant from top position on the mat because he was so heavy, he was so versatile down there, and a very, very good wrestler. Recently, though, hasn't been the same. He's put on some weight and not in a good way, and he has seen to not only slow down like he did in that Volkov fight, but kind of go away from the wrestling. He struck his most recent fights, going to decision against Ivanov there, and a guy who I do think that's not his best skill set. He does have solid volume on the feet. We saw that in a fight there, but his best attribute is his physicality and his finish upside in the wrestling. For that reason, I understand why the line's so close. I do think I favor the cardio of Nascimento, maybe the level of experience as well, but I think I'm going to pick Alexander Romanov here. I think he has more finish upside. I think he's the more dangerous fighter from top position. I think he can land more volume and win the striking optics if his cardio holds up on the feet as well. I don't mind Romanov here. I think his ceiling is higher. If he doesn't look great on the scale, maybe that'll sway me a bit, but I am picking Alexander Romanov in what is a very low-level, sloppy fight here. DraftKings-wise, 7.9K. I mean, Romanov has scored very, very well. 112 against Sherman, 133 against Bandera, 110 De Lima, 127 Martinez. Plenty of over 110-point scores, and I do think he has it on the table at an underdog price tag against a guy Nascimento who, can be hit, is there to be finished. Flip side of things, Nascimento does have some viability in his own right, has never scored above 100 points, which is kind of worrisome, but in a volatile matchup like this, he does have some opportunities to score well. Give me Romanov, though. Solid dog on DraftKings. Solid play in general. I do think I like him this week. Then we move on to the 15-8-1 Charles Jourdain versus the 24-6 Victor Henry. Jourdain making his debut at this new weight class. I love Jourdain. I've backed him a lot in the past. One of my favorite Canadian fighters because he is so fun to watch. Great striking arsenal, very good submission grappling as well, and a guy who, although has been pretty inconsistent, a guy who's fun to watch. He's funny, he's explosive, and he puts on some pretty good entertaining fights. He is a very, very good technical striker. He has shown good durability as well, and a guy who has been pretty well-rounded, but he's far from perfect. He can get hit in his own right. Well, his durability is held up to everyone except for Jean Silva. He can be taken down, but he himself can also go out there and offer the wrestling in his own right. He's facing on Victor Henry here, who is an interesting fighter to break down. 37 years old, where Jourdain's going to be 9 years younger. Henry's going to have a lot more experience in there. Jourdain's going to have 9 years on him here, but Henry still has a ton of experience. A guy who is more of that similar style to Charles Jourdain. He's going to just try to beat you with volume. A ton of forward pressure, ton of volume, is extremely durable in his own right, and a guy who is pretty sound defensively on the ground as well. I think what we have here is a very, very fun striking affair between two guys who were going to throw a ton of volume, maybe pretty durable at that, but I'm going to side with Charles Jourdain here. This new weight class has some questions for me. How is he going to fare with durability? How's his cardio going to look at this down a weight class here? But I think he's doing the cut right. I like his height here, I like his size, and I do think he has more paths that can be done. I think he can mix in some wrestling as well, and I just like the length of his shots. Victor Henry's an in-close boxer. He knows he can absorb a lot of damage, so he'll just try to land two where you can land one, where Jourdain's, I think, is better technically. He's got more pop in his punch, in my opinion, and is willing to throw down, but has some good versatility with strikes, has a lot more kicks than Henry, in my opinion, and a guy who I think is pretty versatile out there. So I like Jourdain. I think the crowd will be fired up behind him. I think he's got a ton of weapons at his disposal, and I do think he wins this fight. Give me Charles Jourdain and his bantamweight debut. DraftKings wise, though, you don't have to play this one. Although they have a ton of volume, Jourdain isn't necessarily the best DraftKings scorer. He pretty much scores low 90s when he wins. 93 against Ramos, 93 against Gracie, 92 against Venata, 91 against Ewell. That's pretty consistent, actually, but not going to hit that home run score. Victor Henry's also been super durable, so I think it's just a high-volume striking affair where he probably scores 90 points in a win. Don't want to get him too often. Let's stay away from this one. Then we have the 11-3 Jasudavicius versus the 17-9 Queen of Violence, Ariane Lipski. This one's also a really good fight. If we talk about Canadian promise, it's usually Jasudavicius and Malott we're talking about. At least that's who we were talking about last time when they fought in Canada. At 35 years old, she's a bit older here, but someone who has been contending, someone who I believe is in the top 15 here, and someone who has shown some good promise. 5-2 in the UFC, including a very impressive performance last time against Fatima Klein. I like Jasudavicius. She is a national champion wrestler, is very aggressive at that. And she does have a lot of size and physicality. That's how she wins her fights. She'll take people down. She'll look to beat you up on the ground. And she's just a brute on the feet. She'll tuck her head and she'll swing crazy. Not the most technicality, but very durable, very good cardio, very good pressure-friendly style, and someone who will just look to drag you into a brawl. In doing so, she's got the good size to win the mat. She's got good durability. She's got good cardio, and I think that makes it for a very fun fight. She is also the Queen of Violence, in my opinion, but Lipski is a different level there. She got the knee bar submission. She herself has been on a decent streak when it comes to her striking. She's a pretty fun fighter. You have to give it to her, but someone who is a bit inconsistent at times. She has been knocked out in 3 of her losses there. Someone who is maybe a bit hit or miss, but has been coming to Toronto a bit recently. And I think in this spot, although she's got some very good technicality on the feet, someone who I do think can maybe land the more impactful shots in the feet, be more technical there against Jasudavicius, and someone who does also have a really good submission game, someone who just has holes, right? I don't think she has the best cardio at all times. I think that she can be taken down and held down as people have done to her in the past. And I don't think she has necessarily the volume to match Jasudavicius in a brawl like this, or the physicality to put up with her against the cage. So I am going to pick Jasudavicius here. I'm a bit tentative to do so because Lipski hasn't been on a pretty good roll recently, but I do like Jasmine. I think she's set up for success here in front of her home crowd, and someone who I do think is going to go out there and look to bully her opponent. Heavy in the clinch, good takedowns, and solid ground and pound down there. I think she'll put on a fun fight, and I do think it comes with a ton of volume in doing so, which is why she's a decent play on DraftKings. She's up top, more expensive, $9K, but her last time in Canada scored 170 points, a phenomenal score with takedown upside, with control time upside, and just a ton of strikes. She's always aggressive. She's always looking for that finish, and the volume she puts out there translates really well to DraftKings. I like her more than Zalal, and I think she's a very solid option up top, and probably my favorite cash play on the entire slate. So give me Jasudavicius. I do like her. Lipski probably won't get to as much because I don't see her winning too often, but in theory does have a pretty good floor as well. Is pretty cheap. I just don't think she wins. So give me Jasudavicius. I think she get it done. Should be a phenomenal fight. And the prelim headliner, we have the 11-2 Amin Zahabi versus the 29 Pedro Munhoz. And if you would have told me Amin Zahabi would be in the role he was a few months ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you. And that's probably to my own demise. I was pretty hypercritical of him. Did not necessarily see him as our best Canadian prospect, although prospect's a little tough being he will be 37 in a couple weeks. But a guy who has really come into his own. He himself is a phenomenal counter boxer. He's very smart, he's very composed, he's very technical in there, and he's able to go out there and make his reads as the fight goes on. With good takedown defense and a phenomenal camp around him, he does have some tools to go out here and succeed, and he has proven people wrong. Huge underdog last time and had a great performance against Basharad, a guy who is really highly talented, and Zahabi showed him that, there could be levels to this striking. Zahabi's a phenomenal counter striker. He's got very good quick hands, and he's not really going to force too much. If the shot's there, he's going to take it. He's very accurate, and you like that from Zahabi. And he's facing up Pedro Munhoz, a guy who is kind of similar. Munhoz is not I'd say, volume striker. He's not a grappler. He is an extremely durable fighter who is going to throw heavy and is going to look to hit you. He's a bit smaller for the division, and he's just a guy who's willing to go out there and strike, looking to absorb a few shots because he is so durable to land that powerful one in his own right, and who's been at the top forever. I think it's the perfect test for Zahabi. He doesn't get a guy who's going to shoot takedowns. He gets the guy who gets to go out there and strike with him. And in doing so, I think Zahabi has phenomenal striking, phenomenal counter boxing. I do not fault anybody for picking him here, but I did side with Pedro Munhoz in this one. I favor Munhoz's durability. I favor Munhoz as being the guy who's going to throw the more powerful shots. And being the level of experience Munhoz has, the leg kicks he does have, I just think he's more dangerous out there 15 minutes. Now, if you told me Zahabi goes out there, lands 30 strikes, plays defensively sound, and wins this fight, I would not be surprised at all, but I just think Pedro Munhoz has more finishing opportunity. I think he has the ability to win the moments here. And I think for everything Zahabi has technically on the feet, it's not like Munhoz isn't technically sound as well. So with the durability Munhoz has, the power he brings, I did pick him in this spot here. Very low confidence. I do think Zahabi is very live to win a low volume decision here, but this is not a fight I want too much of on DraftKings. Both these guys do not score very well. Zahabi's decision wins scored 60, 51, and 58, whereas Munhoz, when he's going out the decision, scored 72 and 67. Horrible DraftKings scores in their own rights. If I had to play either of them, it would be Munhoz. I do think he has more finish upside and will be a pretty low-owned option, a very good contrarian play at 8.3. However, I do think it's a low-volume striking affair, so it does not translate well to DraftKings. I would prefer to go elsewhere. Next up, 10-2-1 Mike Malott. 16-6 Trevin Giles. Mike Malott kicking off the main card. A huge hyped up prospect from Canada here. The guy who we thought was going to take us to the promised land. A guy who was supposed to get a ranking beside his name. And here we are. Getting the Trevin Giles test, right? But no, Mike Malott's a good fighter. Very well-rounded, very explosive, good striking on the feet, and a phenomenal jiu-jitsu game. This guy is dangerous and always looking for the finish. The one knack we have seen on him, aside from the level of competition, is the cardio. And that was proven last time where he absolutely dominated Neil Magny up until that last minute. And he gassed out and he couldn't hold on for another 30 seconds and he did end up losing that fight. Aside from that, this guy is extremely dominant, great, powerful wrestler, phenomenal ground and pound, amazing jiu-jitsu, and very smart with that on the ground as well. And a guy who I do think is the complete package if he improves that cardio and maybe the striking defense a little bit. But this guy is very good. And he, like I said, he's getting the Trevin Giles test, a guy who is pretty well on his own right, a guy who you feed to these newcomers, these streaking newcomers, to see how good they really are. I mean, Giles has fought Carlos Prates, Bonfim, Morales, Duplessis, Dolitze. And this guy's fought like all these top guys and usually getting beat by them, but it's really putting them to the test. He's a solid wrestler in his own right. He's a solid minute winner in the boxing as well, but the flaws Giles has is he can be taken down, he can be submitted, and he can be hit and he can be knocked out. And it's oftentimes like in that protest fight, he was winning that fight until he got knocked out cold. So there are definitely some flaws in his games. He's been finished a bunch. His IQ necessarily isn't there, and this is the perfect test for Mike Malott, in my opinion. For all those reasons I just outlined and all the skills Malott brings, I think Malott gets a finish here. I think he passes the test, which is something that I'm scared to say, but he is so aggressive. He has good takedowns. He has good ground and pound. He has a very good opportunistic submission game, to which we've seen Giles submitted a ton of times, and you add in the power he has on the feet, I think this is Malott's chance to shine. He's going to be in front of the home crowd. I think he's fired up after losing that last one, and I think he's here for redemption. Give me Mike Malott to win this fight. I think it should be a fun one, but I do think he gets that finish here. And in doing so, one of my favorite plays in the entire slate on DraftKings, has scored over 103 points in all his wins. He will be popular, but a guy who I think is going to be aggressive, who's going to have finish upside, grappling upside, knockdown upside. I mean, a lot of the GPP opportunities are there for Malott that the people don't have. I mean, I think he's got way more finish upside than a Zalal, Jasudavicius, Barriault, Horth, Gibson. So Malott at 9.2K, GPP upside. I like the guy to win. I like the guy to finish, and he typically scores well in doing so. Give me Mike Malott. I hope he passes the officer test. Next up, 16-8, the power bar, Marc-Andre Barriault versus this 15-6, Dustin Stolzfus. It's a really fun fight. I love me some Marc-Andre Barriault. He's got that hockey fighter type of style where we'll go in there and look to swing. Phenomenal durability, great cardio, and he looks to break his opponents. He will swing all 15 minutes. He will look to use his physicality against the cage, and he's willing to eat a couple shots to give a few as well. He faces Stolzfus, a guy who I think is actually pretty good, a guy who maybe potentially doesn't get as much love as he deserves, but a guy who's fought some pretty good level of competition. Was knocked out last time Bruno Ferreira, was knocked out in 10 seconds by Abus Magomedov, submitted by Mearshart, submitted by Rodolfo Vieira. He's been fed to the wolves. But he himself has some solid wins on his record. Beat Joe Pyfer, maybe due to injury. Not choked out Punahele Soriano. I mean, he's fought a good level of competition. He just hasn't always been able to compete. In this matchup, I don't think Marc-Andre Barriault is perfect by any means. I mean, he is still pretty questionable on the ground. He is still very hittable on the feet, but a guy who is just going to look to break you. And if you cannot stifle the offensive Barriault, you're not going to win this fight. And I think that Stolzfus is definitely going to try. I just don't know how much he's going to succeed. Let me say right off the rip, I think the line's wide. And if it continues to climb, I might take a shot on Stolzfus because he has shown grappling ability. We have seen Barriault stuck on his back. He's landed 2 or more takedowns a few times in the UFC already, and I do think that's a path for him here, so I definitely have some interest in him. However, when it comes to picking a winner, we have the cardio, the durability, and the pressure of someone like Barriault, who's just going to look to put a beating on Stolzfus until Stolzfus can't take it anymore. I do like Barriault's style. I like how the crowd fires him up, and I do think he will go forward. So the line's wide. I will look to see if I can play some Stolzfus by sub if it comes out, but I do think Barriault should win this fight more times than not. On DraftKings, though, a phenomenal fight. I think if Barriault's winning, it's with volume, it's with maybe some control against the cage, and maybe a late finish. And he scored 120 against Marquez, 101 against Wright, 132 against Azatar. His volume style has scored well in the past, and I don't mind him at 8.9K. But I think Stolzfus is my sneaky dart throw underdog this week. In his 2 wins, he scored 78, which isn't good, and 132. And I think his path to victory here is going to be grappling dependent. I don't think he wins a striking battle. So if that's the case, and you need takedowns, I think that fight could score very, very well on DraftKings. So Stolzfus at 7.3K, a little bit of a dart throw for me down low. I do like this fight as a whole. I did pick Marc-Andre Barriault. It should be a phenomenal matchup. And then we get this weird one here. I don't know why it's on the main card, but the 15-7 Bredson Ribeiro versus the 8-3-1 Kyle Machado. I guess could be a fun one due to their styles, but you got the 15-7 Bredson Ribeiro, a guy who I'm not high on, a guy who does theoretically have a black belt, but a guy who can be taken down, a guy who's super hittable on the feet, who does not have the most technique, but does have a lot of power. I've been fading Ribeiro. My boy Ming Yang Zhang came through. But I face on Kyle Machado, a guy who's a bit different, a guy who's been to decision a ton inside the UFC, a guy who brings a different style. He was at heavyweight, he is making the cut down here to 205, which is definitely going to be interesting, but a spot where we're going to have to see how it looks in the scales maybe before seeing this, because his style isn't the same as Ribeiro. Ribeiro wants to go out there, get in a brawl, and look to land the power shots. Machado wants to take a couple shots, walk forward, and either wrestle or look to throw shots his own right. He's more of a cage control, volume, pressure guy. Hasn't worked the best side of the UFC, but he has fought some decent level competition, and it's just a spot where I don't think Ribeiro's good. So are they setting up Machado in his Canadian country to go out there and have success? I'm not too sure about it. Ribeiro definitely has a chance to go out there and land that powerful shot. I'm not saying he can't. I think power is definitely on his side, and Machado is there to be hit. But more times than not, I have to pick Kyle Machado here. Like his forward pressure, I think he can have some success in the grappling if it goes there. He himself, I think, can land some shots on Ribeiro, who I have seen rocked and knocked out before, and I do think he's extremely hittable in his own right. So give me Kyle Machado, very low confidence, very low level 205 fair, very, very low level, but I am going to pick him to win. DraftKings wise, I guess they both have some viability, but considering how close this fight is, I don't know how much of a stand I want to take. Machado has been a horrible DraftKings scorer so far, but he does have grappling success, he does have volume, and he does have a guy in front of him who can be KO'd. Whereas I don't think Ribeiro is going to win this fight without a knockout, so I think he does have some upside in his own right. Not my most confident affair, but I am picking Count Machado. Let's move on to the next. And that next one is the 28-12 Black Beast Derek Lewis versus the 8-0 Janata Diniz. It's a very interesting fight. I am always a fan of a Derek Lewis fight. The rule is always never bet against Derek Lewis, and I don't think I'm going to here. He's facing a kickboxer here, Janata Diniz, a guy who has been not in the UFC for very long, but is undefeated here at 8-0. A guy who has a ton of power in his hands. Not the quickest hands by any means. He's pretty slow to it, but makes very good reads. Has a ton of power in his hands, who can be hit, but a guy who wants to keep on the feet. And we're going to get ourselves a nice little swang and bang affair with Derek Lewis, because neither of these guys really want to go out there and shoot takedowns. Derek Lewis is a fan favorite fighter. He's almost 40 years old, most knockouts in UFC history, extremely powerful, and that's what he is. He's not going to throw volume. He's not going to want to beat in the third round. He's not going to go out there and shoot takedowns. He's going to look to land that powerful shot. And that's why this fight's so interesting. It's the powerful shots of Derek Lewis with no technicality versus the experienced kickboxer here, Diniz, who has never fought someone with the power of Lewis, but someone who is probably the better technical kickboxer. I know he's a better technical kickboxer. So how does this fight play out? Originally, I was leaning towards Diniz, but the guy just doesn't look like an elite kickboxer. He's hit way too often. He leaves his head on the center line. He does counter pretty well. He does have some good strikes, but I'm going to go with Derek Lewis here. Not only do I think Derek Lewis is going to have the opportunity to crack Janata Diniz, but way better level of competition. I think if Derek Lewis gets on top position, this fight's over in a heartbeat. I think he's the person who's more likely to go out there and potentially get it to the ground. I mean, he was kind of messing around with Nascimento in that last one. Maybe he'll mess around here too. I don't know. I picked Derek Lewis, not the most confident, but on DraftKings, I'll play him. 7.6K, like I said, most knockouts in UFC history. 133 against Lima with a flying knee. 105 against Dawkins in an early knockout. 108 against Olenek in a second rounder there. No one has more KO upside than Derek Lewis. One of the most powerful fighters we've ever seen in the UFC. I will pick him here. Diniz, I mean, like I said, Lewis is not good technically. Diniz could be the better kickboxer and could just knock out Derek Lewis. So for that reason, probably have to have some Diniz at 8.6 to his upside. But I pick Lewis, and I'm going to stand by that. Super interesting matchup here. Give me Derek Lewis. Let's move on. Co-main event, 13-6, Rose Namajunas versus the 12-2, Aaron Blanchfield. And I've been going back and forth on this one all week. I love myself some Rose. She's had her up and downs, maybe not forgive her for that as far as one yet, but is one of the greatest women's fighters of all time. Great power, great ability to mix in reads, solid takedowns in that fight against Emily as well, and has shown some versatility inside the cage. Facing Aaron Blanchfield, who is the new kid on the block, 25 years old, phenomenal wrestler, great top control as well, and someone who has been able to shoot up the rankings pretty quick due to her physicality, her submission upside of the mat, and her very good control grappling. Now, this one's scary a bit due to the size that Rose has. I mean, she's a lifelong 115er, making them move up to 125. I know she had a couple performances up here, but I worry that the top control of Blanchfield might be a bit too much. That's the one caveat I have here. But I did go with Rose. I mean, it's not like Rose hasn't fought wrestlers before. I mean, she beat Zhang Weili a couple times. She's fought Esparza. I mean, Rose has a ton of experience here and has fought wrestlers, and she has shown ability to mixing takedown defense, get takedowns of her own right. And on the feet, there's no competition towards who's the better striker, in my opinion. Aaron Blanchfield is there to be hit. Aaron Blanchfield isn't necessarily the best chain wrestler. She's more of a one-shot entry girl. And I do think more times than not, Rose is able to win the optics, have the 5-round experience to win rounds here as well, and be the better striker overall. And I did pick her to win. Am I saying that with a bunch of confidence? No. Like I said, she could be out-physical in this matchup here, but I did pick Rose to get it done. I do think she's still making improvements, still filling his weight class, and I do favor her striking here. DraftKings-wise, I almost like Blanchfield more from a DraftKings perspective. I mean, if she wins, it's going to score very, very well. But considering I did pick Rose to win, she's 7.8K, she will make her way to my lineups. 120 and 105 in her last two 5-rounders. 5 rounds to work, should be a very, very fun fight. Give me Rose Namajunas to get it done in what is a very close affair. I do not mind either side on DraftKings. Should be a fun one. On to the main event, Brandon Moreno, 21-8-2 versus 17-1 Amir Albazi. Fun main event. Like I said, it's kind of like the Rose one. We have the former champion Brandon Moreno versus the new kid on the block here, Amir Albazi. And what should be a very fun flyweight affair. Brandon Moreno has not looked the same recently, let's put it that way, but we know who he is. A ton of volume, great cardio, good wrestling shall go there as well, and just a ton of durability and heart. Amir Albazi, although has not fought the same level of competition, is shown to be really good. Has landed a takedown in each one of his fights so far, has shown that versatility, is a very, very good striker with good in and out movement and solid power on the feet as well, and a guy who just seems to be very well versed. He got a close one against Kai Kara-France last time. I won't lie there, it was a bit controversial. Is definitely getting a big step up in competition here, considering the other wins are definitely not to this level. And this one's an interesting one to me. I mean, Moreno definitely didn't look the same last time, but with Albazi's layoff, with his spinal canal stenosis, which I could talk about, which I'm not going to, I think he's recovering from it now, I'm going to have to side with Brandon Moreno here. Albazi, I think, can be in the striking. I mean, Brandon Moreno's there to be hit. He's not a perfect technical striker, but I just don't think Albazi can keep up with the cardio, with the volume that Moreno has. And although Albazi was able to bail out, to take down against other fighters, Moreno's a phenomenal scrambler. Moreno himself can threaten submissions, can threaten back takes, can threaten wrestling exchanges. I think Moreno has not only the level of competition, but the pace, the volume, the pressure, and the optics to win the spot if he's on the top of his game. When he wanted it, when he had his eyes set on the prize, he was one of the best in the world. He was the best in the world. I just hope his heart's in it here. If it is, I think he should get this done. I think he's more path to doing it. And I do favor his volume over the stretch. 25 minutes to work, I do pick Brandon Moreno. But again, a really, really close one. I do not fault anybody for taking Albazi at underdog price tags. DraftKings-wise, I like Moreno, 8.5K. 5 rounds to work, has the volume, the wrestling, the cardio here to go out here and bring a very good pace. And I do like myself Brandon Moreno. Albazi, for that same reason, has 5 rounds to work, has potential wrestling, has shown good power in his own right, good volume, and therefore could be a solid option. But considering I did pick Moreno, I will side towards him on DraftKings. I got plenty of dogs I'm going towards anyway, so I don't necessarily need to force that. And I do think Brandon Moreno gets it done. Should be a fun fight, but give me the assassin, baby. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I quickly went through my quick picks. I'm thinking Brandon Moreno, Rose Namajunas, Derek Lewis, Kyle Machado, Marc-Andre Barriault, Mike Malott, Pedro Munhoz, Jasudavicius, Charles Jourdain, Alexander Romanov, Garrett Armfield, Cody Gibson, Jamelin Horth, and Youssef Zalal. DraftKings-wise, very interesting pricing this week, but I do like it. Up top, love Malott and GBP, love Jasudavicius and Cash as my favorite options up top. In the mid-range, I think Cody Gibson's going to be a solid play. And I think both sides in the main event are things you want to target. I kind of prefer the Rose and Moreno combination, but you can go either way. Underdog-wise, I love Romanov. I think, like I said, Namajunas is going to be a good play. Lewis, if he wins, is going to score well. Armfield, if he wins, is going to score well. And then my dart throw this week is Stolzfus for tournament plays to get some leverage. I think Horth and Munhoz can be good ways to get different. Betting-wise, I'll have my full bet card out either Friday night or Saturday morning. Make sure to check me out on Twitter at Campbell's Gordo. As I mentioned, check out Established Run for premium DraftKings content and check out CoolBet using code Gordo in the description down below. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors, guys. Let's go Canada, and let's make some money, guys.